Hey everybody, my name is Alex, and in this video I'm going to go over how to build your own legacy Docker images for Autonomys. I recently did a little reconfiguration. I wanted more PCIe X16 slots, and I had some old Supermicro dual Xeon 2 V2 motherboard and CPU combinations that I was using for Space Mesh that I was no longer using. And because of all those extra PCIe lanes in there, I got those running again in the server back there. But there are no Docker images built by the Autonomys team, and you have to build your own. And I had never done anything like this before, but somebody was asking about it in Discord, I think, and I just made a quick guide based on that interaction between that person and Nazar. So again, this is like my first time doing something like this, but it worked for me, so I want to share the knowledge out. If anybody is more familiar with this and has some suggestions, that's great. But there's basically two ways that you can get Docker running for legacy hardware. And legacy hardware, I guess it's anything that's older than Skylake. So for me, like my 2697 Xeon V2s, those wouldn't work with just the Skylake builds. So just an FYI, if you're not too sure, most likely it just won't work with the Skylake builds. And let's just real quick, if you go to the subspace.network, go to farm, or actually you can just go to docs. You'll see under farming and staking, farming, advanced CLI, and then if you go to install, there's Docker, and you're going to notice that there's no legacy build for Docker. Now, if you were to go to like just Ubuntu and you're going to use the executables, you have legacy, and then you have Skylake Plus. So what we're doing is going to build the Docker image for the Skylake, for the legacy, because the Skylake Plus are already built. And I have a guide for this. I'll post a link to the Substack article in the description of the YouTube video. But basically, there's going to be two options here. You can build your own image, and you need to rebuild the image for every version that comes out. So we're on June 18th right now. If June 27th comes out, you'll have to rebuild your own image and then restart your containers with the new image, and you have to keep up with that. So we'll go over how to build it yourself, and that's like the most secure way because you are cloning the subspace repo, you are building the image yourself and deploying it all. You're in control of everything. The other option is to use my image on dockerhub. So if you go to dockerhub, you can create repositories, and I have an Autonomys legacy node and an Autonomys legacy farmer that I've basically built, and I'll tag it with the version that it was built based on. And you can actually just use this image just like you would the one for the Skylake Plus build that the Autonomy team puts out. Autonomys, I guess. It's very confusing with this name change because I still want to say, or it's Autonomous, and I keep wanting to say autonomy, Autonomys. Sorry, it's just my own problem here. It's going to take me a little while to adapt to this name change. I'm a creature of habit. As soon as I'm used to saying something one way, it's hard for me to change it. So we'll go over both of these, and it's really easy, to be honest. So let's get started. We're going to start out with building your own image. So I have my terminal here, or I thought I did. There we go. So the first thing you're going to want to do is clone the subspace Git repo. And if you're using Ubuntu like I am, you probably already have Git installed. But in case you don't, you can just do sudo apt install Git. And you're going to see I already have the newest version. And then you're simply going to clone the repo. So that'll be git clone and then the URL for the repo. And this is a pretty big repo, so you're going to need to download it, which may take a little bit of time here. And then once the repo is downloaded, you can just cd into it, and then you're going to run a build command. So there's a few ways to do this. You can just run the command like this. So we're doing docker build x, and build x is like a more sophisticated way of building a Docker image. I don't know the details, but it seems like it will build and compile everything for your specific hardware when you're building it. I've only ever used docker build, but build x build is just like a more sophisticated way of doing it. Progress plain, so that'll just print out, the logs. -t is our tag. So you can leave it just something like this, Autonomys legacy farmer, and it's going to create a local image with a tag of latest. So that would be equivalent to coming in here and doing a colon and then putting latest. But by default, it adds that latest tag. Now this can make it confusing because you might forget what version you built. So I recommend actually adding a colon here, but then putting in the current version of your build. So just paste that in there. And now you know, because it'll have this tag for June 18th, you know it's the June 18th build. And then we're going to be using, so we have -f, and we're specifying the file. And let me just copy this real quick. And if we were to just do ls, we can see we have some Docker files. So there's a Docker file farmer, and there's a Docker file node. And this is like how it knows what to build for the image. So when we run this command here, it's going to be using this Docker file-farmer as an input. So we can go ahead and hit enter on that, and it's going to build the image. Now this takes some time because it has to compile things, it has to go through the whole process of building that Docker file. And there's one step especially where it takes quite a bit of time to do. I call it out in the guide, so let me switch back while this is working. So yeah, when it actually compiles the subspace farmer, so I'm doing the farmer first, you're gonna have to do the exact same thing for the node. So there's two separate Docker images, so you have to do two separate builds for Docker, but it's the same process. So as you can see down here, I have an example of doing the node. So we're going to use the Docker file node here instead of Docker file farmer. And make sure you're not forgetting this little period. That's not a typo. When you put a period at the end like this, it's basically saying it's going to build this in the current folder that you're in. So since we cd'd into the subspace folder, that's the context. We want to use the context of that folder that we're inside of. It can take a couple minutes. You're going to see here, it's still building. I can see the other screen, but I just want to go through some of this, side notes that may be confusing the first time you do it. And then once we build it, we'll be able to see it in Docker using the Docker image ls. And you'll see we're going to have the tag for mine will, since I put in the Gemini 3H June 18th, you'll see that it's listed there. But when I did this example, I didn't use a tag. So you can see it automatically added the latest tag here. I don't really like that. I prefer to actually have the tag for the version. So I'll show you that once this is done compiling. And then in Portainer, the same way, won't let me open it, but it's too small for you to read. But basically inside Portainer, actually we can go in Portainer. This is Charlie, and you can see right now I have no images here. So I'm still building, well, I have the Portainer agent. So I only have one image on this PC, and it's just the Portainer agent. Once the image finishes being built, I'll be able to show you in here that we have a new image and it will be the legacy build for the farmer. So let's go back and um, I'll just cover while we're waiting using this in your stack file. So I'm not going to go over like the entire stack file here because it's just too much text. And if you aren't familiar with how to run the stack files and deploy the images, I have other guides on Substack that show you how to actually deploy it. All you're going to be doing though is replacing the official image on your legacy hardware with your own image. So Autonomy's legacy node, and then Autonomy's legacy farmer for your farmer. So this is a controller, it's clusters. If you haven't run clusters, I also have a guide on that. But the idea is that you're now able to use your own images here. And then to make things easier, I'm also providing these for everybody. So each time a new version comes out, I will build them and then I will deploy them and push them to these repositories in dockerhub. And you'll see, I'll tag them appropriately. So each time there's a new version, you'll see a new tag get listed here. And using them is exactly like using the official images, where all you're doing inside your stack files is just putting like Hake hardware, because that's the repository. You can even see it right here. Hake hardware, Autonomy's legacy node, and then you're going to want to put the appropriate tag. So colon, and then the tag that's in the repo. And then when June 27th version comes out, all you're going to need to do, just like when you update the official image, is just replace this tag here with June 27th. And before you update, just confirm that I actually have the latest version in here. I do work like a normal 9 to 5, so chances are if an update comes out during that time, it might take a couple hours for me to update it, but I will always try and update it as quickly as possible. And there may also be like test builds in here, so just keep an eye out to make sure you're using the right one. Because like just recently I was doing this and there seemed to be an issue or something with the cluster. If you're running like multiple controllers or multiple caches, then there was an issue with the cache groups or something like that. So there was like another build that was created, and you might see me upload those. But the idea is the same. If you want to use mine, and granted, you are then trusting that I've built these images without adding any sort of nefarious code, you can do Docker, inspect the image to see the metadata. You can check the history, but honestly, if you're super security conscious, it's best to just build your own each time a new version comes out. Okay, we are basically just waiting for this step here. This one always takes the longest when you're building these. I'm just going to, just so we don't have to wait, I'm going to jump to Bravo, which already has this built. So if I go into Bravo and I do Docker image ls, we can see I've got a few different builds here. So I was hoping to use Charlie because it was a little bit more clean. But you can see I've built Autonomy's legacy node. This is my Docker Hub version, and it's June 18th. But then I also have my local version here for the node with the tag June 18th. So you can see these are the same, and then also the Docker Hub version, and then the local version that I built. And then this is also when I was testing yesterday. Basically another farmer. I actually need to delete that. So that's one way of checking to make sure that your image was built correctly. Another is Importainer. So let me go back to my browser here. And if we go to Bravo, and we go to images, you'll see I have these images here for Charlie. And there's the Docker Hub version. And then it looks like it's like grouping these images, maybe because they're exactly the same. They're grouping them together. So it knows, I guess, that these builds are the same, even though this one's local and this one is uh, hosted on Docker Hub. And actually, it looks like the build just finished on Charlie. So let's go over to Charlie real quick just to see what it looks like. So you can see I've just built my local version. And all I would need to do is like when you're inside your stack files, you would just, in the image section, you would update it with whatever it is. So Autonomys Legacy Farmer, Gemini 3H 2024. And that just corresponds to the image. So Hake Hardware or Autonomy. So I know I covered this pretty in depth, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear, what you're using when you're adding these to your images. So let's just one final thing so you can see this is what it looks like, finished, and naming Docker IO library Autonomy's Legacy Farmer, Gemini 3H 2024, June 18th, and it's done. So Docker image ls, we can see we have now just Portainer like we had before, but we also have the autonomous, oh my gosh, Legacy Farmer with the tag. So we would just be using this colon this in our stack files or Docker Compose, however you want to do it. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.